History, as they say, is written by the victors. But what happens when victory is a fantasy? When you're trapped, an enemy army in front of you, and an even bigger one marching to crush you from behind. This isn't some military thought experiment. This is the story of a commander who, staring down total annihilation, flipped the script with a plan so audacious it would be studied for centuries. This is the story of Julius Caesar at the siege of Alesia. The year is 52 BC. For 6 long years, Julius Caesar has been dragging his Roman legions across the wild territories of Gaul, what we now know as France, Belgium, and Switzerland. One by one, the fiercely independent GIC tribes fell, either conquered or forced into uneasy alliances. Caesar's campaigns were relentless, a slow, grinding expansion of Roman power that made him fabulously wealthy and politically powerful back home. But the Gauls were done. They were tired of Roman garrisons, tired of their supplies being taken, and tired of being treated like subjects in their own lands. A fire of rebellion was smoldering, and it was about to be lit by one man, Vercingetorix. Vercingetorix was a charismatic chieftain of the Arveri tribe, and he was a new breed of GIC leader. Where others saw only ancient tribal rivalries, he saw the chance for a united front. Through smart diplomacy and sheer force of will, he did what no one thought possible. He united the GIC tribes with a single goal: to throw Caesar and his legions out of Gaul for good. His strategy was clever and brutal. He knew a straight-up fight with the disciplined Roman legions was suicide. So he chose to starve them out. He adopted a scorched earth policy, burning towns, farms, and fields to deny the Roman army food. For a while it worked. Caesar's army, far from home, with its supply lines stretched thin, started to feel the pain. Caesar even suffered a rare, humiliating defeat at the town of Govia, Vercingetorix's own stronghold. That loss was a huge blow to Roman pride and a massive morale boost for the rebellion, which was now bigger and bolder than ever. But you don't corner Caesar so easily. He regrouped his legions, now about 10 of them, and crucially hired a contingent of elite Germanic cavalry, legendary for their ferocity, to counter the Gauls. Emboldened by his win at Gergoia, Vercingetorix decided to risk a direct attack. He sent his cavalry to hit Caesar's marching column. It was a fatal mistake. Caesar's new Germanic cavalry didn't just defeat the GAC horsemen, they shattered them. Shaken, Vercingetorix made a choice that would seal his fate. He retreated with his entire army, around 80,000 warriors, to the fortified hill fort, or Apodum, of Alesia. It was a natural fortress perched on a high plateau with steep slopes and flanked by 2 rivers. From here, Vercingetorix thought he could wait. Caesar out. He saw Alesia as a trap. Before Caesar could fully surround him, he sent his remaining cavalry out with an urgent message for his allies across Gaul. Gather every warrior you can find and march on Alesia. The plan was simple. He would hold Caesar in place from inside the fortress. And when the massive relief army showed up, they'd crush the Romans between the hammer and the anvil. The problem facing Caesar was now almost comical in its severity. He was deep in hostile territory. In front of him, an army of 80,000 Gauls was dug into a fortress he couldn't possibly assault. And somewhere behind him, a GIC super army was gathering to wipe him off the map. Retreat meant admitting defeat and being hunted down. Attacking meant suicide. He was the besieger who was about to be besieged. A lesser general would have folded, but Caesar wasn't a lesser general. His mind didn't just see a trap, he saw an opportunity. If Vercingetorix wanted a bloody showdown at Alesia, Caesar would give him one. But on a battlefield of his own creation, one where GIC numbers meant nothing against Roman engineering, his solution was as simple as it was insane. He wouldn't just build a wall to besiege Alesia. He would build two of them. The first wall, the circumvallation, would be an 11 ring around Alesia, trapping Vercingetorix and his 80,000 men inside, cutting them off completely. This alone was a massive undertaking, but the real genius was the second wall. Knowing that GIC relief army was coming, Caesar ordered an even longer 14 outer wall built, the contravallation, which faced outwards. This wall was designed to protect his army from the attack he knew was coming. He was literally building a fortress shaped like a donut with his legions sandwiched in the middle. They would simultaneously be the besiegers and the besieged. For about a month, the Roman legionaries, who were just as much builders as they were soldiers, worked themselves to the bone. And these weren't just simple walls. As Caesar's own writings and modern archaeology show, they were a complex, layered killing machine. Facing outwards from the main wall was a nightmare zone of traps. The Romans dug trenches and diverted nearby rivers to create moats. Beyond that, they built a deadly minefield. There were camouflaged pits called lees, each with a sharpened stake at the bottom to impale anyone who fell in. Then came the sippy, half-buried logs, studded with iron hooks, to snag soldiers' feet. And finally, the whole field was littered with small, sharp stakes called stimuli to make any organized charge a chaotic, bloody mess. If an attacker made it through that, they'd face the main rampart, a 12-t high wall of earth and timber, topped with a wooden palisade and dotted with 23 towers armed with Roman artillery. The entire system was designed to destroy the momentum of a charge and funnel attackers into kill zones where the well-trained legionaries could cut them down. The inner wall facing Alesia was a slightly shorter identical copy. As the Romans built, the situation inside Alesia grew desperate. Vercingetorix realized his food was running out. He had only enough for his warriors. In a grim, calculated move, he forced all the civilians from the town of Alesia, thousands of men, women, and children out of the gates, hoping Caesar would let them through the Roman lines. He probably hoped to create a distraction or, at the very least, save food for his army. Caesar was merciless. He refused to let them pass. The civilians were trapped in the no-man's land between their own city walls and the Roman siege lines, left to starve to death. Their cries were a constant, harrowing sound for the warriors on the walls, a brutal piece of psychological warfare. The Romans were also running low on supplies, and the men were exhausted. It was a frantic race against time. Every passing day brought the GAC relief army closer. Finally, the work was done. The trap was set. All they could do was wait. In late September, the wait was over. Roman lookouts saw them. A vast ocean of warriors cresting the hills, the GAC relief army had arrived. It was a terrifying sight. Caesar claimed that they had a staggering 250,000 infantry and 8,000 cavalry. Modern historians think it was probably closer to 100,000, but either way, it was a gigantic force. They were led by a council of chiefs, including Vercingetorix's cousin, Verassi. This was it. Caesar's army of roughly 50,000 men was now caught exactly as Vercingetorix had planned. Trapped between 80,000 warriors in front and 100,000 more at their backs, outnumbered at least 3-1, the Romans were an island in a sea of enemies. But it was an island they had built themselves. The final battle for Gaul began. The first big assault came from the relief army. Their cavalry charged across the plain, smashing against the outer wall while their infantry swarmed in behind them. At the same time, Vercingetorix heard the battle rage and launched his own attack from inside Alesia. The fighting was furious. The Romans were stretched thin, fighting desperately on two fronts. Caesar rode along the lines, his presence alone inspiring his men to hold. The fortifications worked perfectly. The GIC charge was tripped up and broken apart by the traps, and the disciplined Romans cut down the disorganized attackers. The day was saved by Caesar's Germanic cavalry, who he unleashed in a ferocious countercharge that shattered the GIC horsemen. The first wave was over. The Gauls didn't give up. The next night they attacked again under the cover of darkness. Chaos, confused, brutal fighting erupted all along the ramparts. In a few places the Gauls broke through, but Caesar had anticipated a night attack. He had mobile reserves ready under his most trusted commanders, Mark Antony and Gaius Trebonius. They rushed to plug the gaps and push the GS back inside. Alesia Vercinge's attack was too slow. His men got bogged down trying to fill the Roman trenches and lost the element of surprise. The second assault failed. The Gauls now knew a frontal attack wasn't working, but their scouts had found a weak spot. To the north, a large hill had been impossible to include inside the Roman siege lines. There was a Roman camp there, but its defenses were weaker. This would be the spot for the final all-or-nothing attack. A GIC chief, Vercingetorix, was given 60,000 of their best warriors. He marched them through the night to get into position behind this weak point. At midday, they would launch a massive coordinated assault. Vercingetorix would storm the weak camp. The main army would attack all along the outer wall to pin the Romans down. Vercingetorix would lead a final desperate charge from inside Alesia. The attack began, and it almost worked. Vercingetorix's warriors swarmed the northern camp, overwhelming the defenders. The Roman line started to break. This was the crisis point, and this is where Caesar proved why he was a legend. He didn't panic. He calmly sent reserves to struggling areas, but he saw that the northern camp was about to collapse. He had to go himself. Grabbing a small contingent of men, he rode straight into the chaos. His famous scarlet cloak, making him impossible to miss. The sight of their general rallying them in person stiffened the legionaries' resolve. They fought back with new fury, but the sheer number of Gauls was still overwhelming. Caesar made his final game-winning gamble. He ordered his top cavalry commander, Titus Labienus, to take a few cohorts, leave the fortifications entirely, ride all the way around the battle, and smash into the back of Vercingetorix's army. It was an insanely risky move that left other parts of his line dangerously weak. As Labienus and his cavalry vanished, the fighting reached its absolute peak. Gauls were pouring into the Roman camp. Then, just as the Roman lines were about to snap, the sound of Roman trumpets echoed from behind the Gauls. Labienus was here. His cavalry crashed into the rear of Vercingetorix's army. The Gauls, who thought they were the ones doing the surrounding, were now suddenly caught in a vice. The effect was instantaneous. The GIC attack collapsed into a panicked rout. Warriors dropped their weapons and ran, only to be hunted down by the relentless Germanic cavalry. Seeing their relief army completely disintegrate, the other Gauls lost heart and fled. The battle was over. Caesar had won. The fields around Alesia were a scene of total carnage. Tens of thousands of GIC warriors lay dead. While ancient numbers are tricky, the great GIC relief army had effectively ceased to exist. Inside Alesia, all hope died with it. They had watched their salvation be destroyed. Their food was gone. Their spirit was broken. The next day, Vercinge called his war council. He told them he had fought for the freedom of Gaul, not for himself, and now they had to face the end. He gave them two choices: kill him themselves to try and appease Caesar, or hand him over alive. They chose surrender. Caesar ordered them to lay down their weapons and for their leaders to come out. Vercingetorix, dressed in his finest armor, rode out alone. He circled the seated Caesar, got off his horse, and threw his weapons at his conqueror's feet. He didn't say a word. Vercinge was put in chains. He would be held for 6 years, waiting to be paraded through Rome in Caesar's victory parade, the ultimate symbol of the conquest of Gaul. Afterwards, he was quietly strangled in his prison cell,